This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
Hey, warmer friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Ghost Go Soups with myself, Greg Oops Peters, and now a part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we've got ourselves a great two-part conversation with one of our good friends, Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. We're going to be talking with him a lot about the fresh look Mountain West, what to all expect from them this year. We're going to talk about the WAC. We're mostly going to be looking at the West Coast. We might dive into a few East Coast teams as well. Rocco is just such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all those mid-major teams, so we're going to have a good time chatting with him today. And if you ever do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While we did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost, they're making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds anytime and anywhere, and that 100% of gambling transactions are approved. When you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. And with Rocco, I know that he's done a great job on the scheduling front. He always does a great job with his bracketology work over at Bracketeer.org. And for Rocco, you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, and the number 8 all together. And Rocco, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. How you doing? What's been going on?
What's been going on is trying to look at what we're all getting on the West Coast right now, because we do have a lot of changes with regards to the WAC. We have a lot of changes with regards to Mountain West, and everyone is buzzing about Grand Canyon joining the Mountain West, what that's going to mean for them. But how do we take a look at the WAC now that we do have ourselves a very strange situation where there's less than 8 teams, which the minimum to be able to get an NCAA tournament bid is 8. So that makes things a little bit more murkier for them. That's something that they're going to need to address this next season. And it makes things very, very open out there in that conference.
Well, it does. And I think the most unique thing about the WAC is no matter who wins the regular season and how it shakes out, they're all playing each other 3 times. There's only 7 members this season, which is below the NCAA threshold, Greg, for the 8-team requirement to get an automatic bid. But they do have a 2-year grace period, which they won't need to use because we already know some of these schools are moving on to the Big Sky or the Big West or the ASUN, which will now be called the United Conference. So it's one last hurrah for these 7. But looking at the math, it's kind of cool for these 7 because I think, number one, most importantly, Grand Canyon is not in their way, who always has a major advantage in Las Vegas in that tournament. And now it's kind of a wide open opportunity for one of these 7 institutions who desperately want to get into the NCAA tournament, or if it's like an Abilene Christian, their magical upset over Texas a few years back, a chance to get back. And so you also have teams like Tarleton and Utah Tech who just recently became eligible to even qualify. So for 2 of those 7, an exciting opportunity, although they don't have the craziest of talent. I look at it as, okay, Utah Valley, they're the proven commodity. They basically were right there in the mix, and I think actually did win the regular season last year. Obviously, they have to replace a couple of their stars, but Todd Phillips has picked up right where Mark Madsen left off. He's done an amazing job, does not get enough credit. I wrote a little bit about him earlier this week in my 3rd year coaching preview for Basket Under Review, so check that out if you didn't get a chance. But I think Utah Valley, just with the pedigree they have and the amount of winning he's been able to do just in these first few years, as the Wolverine head man. Plus, you add in the fact that they're bringing in Trayvon Leonhardt back, who played such a huge role, like as a glue guy, over 5 assists per night, over 4 rebounds per night, and a steal and a half as their best lockdown defender. That's going to lead to wins. You add in Tyler Hendricks, who, of course, his brother's the superstar that's in the NBA and was a lottery pick, his twin brother. But he got a lot of experience being in the rotation a little bit at UCF. Now gets to go down to the WAC level. Braden Housley comes over from Utah State, who was also stuck on the bench, but obviously from a winning program. And a lot of other guys who either return or some really good JUCO polls, like the Southern Idaho big man, Isaac Hawkins, should play a big role. They also have a Utah transfer in Joel Karam, who was stuck on the bench. I feel like Phillips will have this team in position by the time this crazy league schedule begins. It's a normal 18 games, but you play the other 6 teams 3 times. So every matchup in the WAC tournament, Greg, will be a round 4. So that will be very unique to the WAC. I also think with Dominic Daniels back at California Baptist, he was either the leading scorer last year or right up there at 19.6 points a night. He obviously can play really good defensively, averaging over a steal a game and dishes out some dimes. They brought in Jaden Jackson, who was a quality player at the Big Sky level for Northern Arizona. Martell Williams and Brady Hanige are both back in the mix as returners. And they brought in a big-time volume scorer from Regis, the D2 school in Colorado. That's Chase Mayo Harmon at 15 a game at the D2 level. So there's a good amount of depth. Obviously, Cal Baptist has more resources than most of these places, if not all of them. So there's really no excuse for them not to be in the mix for the championship. And then I think the sneaky one, maybe not if you're a Bart Torvik leveler, but if you're just looking at talent and stuff that pops, is that Abilene Christian team that went 14-18 last year. Obviously, they got to figure out how to win close games. They lost more close games than they won. You start winning some of those and figuring that out with this experience, they've got a real shot. I think the big story for ACU was 7 of the rotation members from last year are all back, led by Keon Williams, 13.7 a night, and Braden Hubbard at over 10 a night. Those guys can also rebound really well. So I like Abilene Christian, Cal Baptist, and Utah Valley to be the 3 at the top, but you could see an Arlington winning this league. And you could also see, Billy Gillespie just being a pest in March, even if Tarleton has a bad record, and stealing the bid.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that it is so interesting to look at this conference with so many teams that play such a unique style as well. And we know that a few of these teams that were out there in the WAC last season moved on, and everyone's obviously talking about Grand Canyon. But what should expectations be for Seattle out there in the WCC? Because as we know, the WCC, there's a very clear top, and then it just feels like a mismatch after that. Gonzaga and St. Mary's are the top 2. And I feel like San Francisco and Santa Clara have sort of been playing musical chairs with the 3 and the 4, but I feel like 5 through 8 is very wide open, and I do think that with what Seattle has been able to do over there in the WAC, it has been pretty special over the last few years under Chris Victor, and I'm very curious to see how they fare out there in more of that middle part of the WCC.
Yeah, well, bringing back Malik Arrington and Maldonado and Christophilus, that's a great start. Those guys have a ton of experience now. They're all short backcourt guys that can score, contribute to winning. Arrington's a heck of a passer, nearly 5 assists a night. They brought in a sneaky, talented guy from Gonzaga. We got a little glimpse of him from South Korea, Jun Seuk Yeo, and the Gonzaga fans loved him when he came in the game. I think he could be a quality player. Some believe he'll actually be a starter at Seattle. In the middle, Huron Dan got a little bit of experience, got his feet wet as a freshman. They expect him to take a giant step forward at 6'10", but even if he's not the guy in the middle, they do have 7-foot transfer Austin Marr from Grand Canyon. Another guy kind of similar to Dan, where he was seldom used as a freshman, but again, these bigs are growing into their bodies. They're getting comfortable with the college game. You tend to see a lot of jumps from freshman to sophomore. So they got 2 options there that they can rotate or play the hot hand. You also have a guy who played a little bit more in Brock Felder at Southern Utah. Obviously, he's got to take the jump from the WAC to the WCC with the entire Seattle program. But I think there's enough here. The D2 kid from Chico State was an All-American, and that's JoJo Murphy. So I'm curious to see if he can be the alpha of the group. Obviously, they were fortunate to have Matthew Alexander Moncrief in the past and Tyson in the past, who were just big-time volume scorers. And you could maybe see JoJo Murphy taking that role this year for Seattle U. I just think there's a lot of meat on the bone roster-wise because they have a lot of different variations and lineup combinations they can go to. I think it's a little bit stronger on paper than even Washington State, which would be, it's going to be so crazy as a guy. I am from Seattle, born and raised, Greg. And it's just going to be wild to me to see Seattle and Washington State in the same conference for 1 year. And I really think Seattle's going to bring it in those games. I'm excited to see how those games go. I know the one in Seattle will be at the big Climate Pledge NHL Arena, as will most of their big games. So I imagine St. Mary's, Gonzaga for sure, and a couple others will be in the big building where the NHL is played. But what you've seen probably with the data for Seattle is they actually perform better in most cases in the small place, the Red Hawk Center, 900 people. So you'll have your Pepperdine, your Pacific, Portland type of matchups in there, and they might play really, really well in there actually, and that's what history tells us. I have Seattle pegged as number 6 for today. I'm not sure if that's a little too extreme for you, but that's where I see them. I agree. You got San Francisco, Santa Clara with the 2 big dogs in St. Mary's and Gonzaga filling up the first 4 spots. And then I do believe that Oregon State still has enough there to hold on to the 5th spot, which they played really well to achieve. Now, they do have to replace some guys in Corvallis, but how exciting for Seattle to be able to battle the Beavers and the Cougars to see who the best, second best, I guess, Northwest team is in the WCC.
Yep, it is going to be a lot of fun, and I know that for Seattle, they've always been gunning to be able to take down Washington, and finally were able to do so recently as well, so that's good for them, and I do think that they are going to be such an interesting team for this upcoming season, as we do have Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and while we have talked about a lot of the, shall we say, devolved whack thus far and some of the ancillary pieces, how about if we take a look at the big ticket item next? Let's take a look at Grand Canyon and just what to expect out of the Mountain West with our good friend in Rocco Miller right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
This podcast is supported by Talkspace.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by our good friend in Mr. Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, the number 8 altogether. And Rocco, we've talked a lot about some of these smaller items that have happened with regards to the WAC and the fact that you don't have a lot of the teams that we typically are used to. How about if we take a look at that big ticket item, though, and that's Grand Canyon heading on over to the Mountain West. I just think that it makes a good conference even stronger. Now, I don't know if there's any slam dunk NCAA tournament teams other than perhaps San Diego State, but that depends a lot on Magoon Gwath and whether or not he's going to be back to start the season, when he might be able to come back. But it feels like there's a lot of teams that they could be percolating right around like number 45, number 70 with regards to rankings, and Grand Canyon is another one of those teams I think is going to be right there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Grand Canyon's bringing 7 newcomers, but they have a lot of skill and a lot of guys who have played big roles from different levels. So I expect them to compete and pull off some big wins. Their home court advantage is crazy. And that's what the story of the Mountain West has always been. So to add another team with great home court advantage just adds to the league story. You know, obviously when you go to the mountains, you deal with altitude and crazy fans at places like Colorado State, Utah State, and New Mexico. And when you come to the West, now you have to deal with San Diego State's crazy student section, and you've got Grand Canyon speaks for itself with all the havocs there and all the songs they sing all game long. So it's a wild league when it comes to home court advantage. I guess that's where maybe UNLV has to figure it out. Your backyard Rebels there, but I like their roster too. I think when you look at the league, because of some of the San Diego State question marks with injuries, I know Miles Bird returned to practice earlier this week. Guath, I still have some doubts will be back on time. I do think Utah State's the safe choice to be certainly in the top couple teams in the league. They're still my pick to win it coming into the year. Mason Falslev is just such a polished player. If he wasn't so glued in Logan, I think he's originally from Logan. His girlfriend's also a student at Utah State. I think if some of those factors were a little different, he would be a multi-million-dollar earner at the power level. And so the fact that Utah State has a go-to guy as good and as proven as Falslev, it's a great place to start. Carson Templin's been there, seems like forever, but somehow he's still only a junior. He hits big shots. Drake Allen is a good, him and Colby King coming in from Butler. That's good talent. Gary Clark was one of my favorite players in the Southland over at Corpus Christi. He's coming in as a fifth-year guy. There's just so much to like. Zach Keller, also from Utah, comes over, stays in state. Another big body to throw in the mix. A Vanderbilt transfer in MJ Collins, who played quite a bit at Vanderbilt. So Utah State has really established themselves not only as a year in and year out tournament level program, but now they're spending the money to back it up. So I'm really impressed with what they've got. Calhoun loves the team. I'm pretty sold. And if San Diego State obviously was full strength all year long, it'd be pretty tough to top the Aztecs. I do think they'll get more top 25 votes and all that. But I do have the Aztecs second just due to the concerns. I think Boise's got enough back to be in that 3 spot, at least projection wise. They're really only mixing in a couple, maybe 3 newcomers, with Dylan Andrews, of course, playing a big role from UCLA, and Drew Fielder in the middle from Georgetown. But Buchanan's back, Meadow, Keene, Carmichael, a lot of familiar faces there in Bronco land. In the 4-hole, and it's mainly because I have so much respect not only for Eric Olin as a coach, but the entire staff that Eric hired was phenomenal. He brought a couple of his key assistants from UC San Diego to Albuquerque. Also brings in one of the best up-and-coming rising assistant coaches in the West Coast in Coach Wilder from UC Irvine, and basically got that energy away from the Irvine program and into the Mountain West. He's an incredible, he relates to players. He works guys out. He's a great strategist. And then Mike Roberts coming in, who has all types of experience, been around forever. He was at UTEP last year. He was at NC State, Cincinnati in the last 2 or 3 years. They've got a nice mix of staff. They're going to adjust well on the fly. They have a clutch shooter in Chris Howell, who hit countless clutch shots down the stretch at UC San Diego. Obviously, we like JT Rock. His potential at 7'1". Didn't really get to do a lot at Iowa State, but man, the way they can leverage him will be exciting. And Kevin Patton Jr. Been around, big numbers at San Diego, got stuck in the mix at USC. Dayton Albury can really play. I mean, and again, to me, like, so many of these teams are good, right? Especially in the top 7 or 8. But it comes down to the margins and who can really coach and what players keep their heads right in key moments. This New Mexico team, I like a lot of these guys. I've had the chance to get to meet a lot of them and watch a lot of them play. So I feel good about putting them 4th. And then Grand Canyon in the 5-hole, just based on talent and home court advantage. And then I do like your Rebels, Greg, to be in that 6th spot. I just think with Colorado State's got to rebuild. You saw their schedule come out this week. You can tell they're trying to kind of ease into the season. I like Ali Farouk-Manesh. Of course, he's a hero. We love him. I think he'll be a great coach down the road, but there's still a lot to prove and a lot to replace from that great team last year. So Colorado State's 7, and I really do feel like, and hopefully Steve Alford can prove me wrong, but I really do feel like Nevada's taken a couple steps backwards from where they were 2 years ago. So I've got them all the way down at the 8th spot.
Yep, and I do think that it is going to be a really interesting middle of the Mountain West this year as well, because I just have noticed this in general. It has been a conference with a lot of carnage, somehow, some way. San Diego State is always towards the top, but I feel like the parity in this conference is so great, and even though there was a lot of coaches that left, I feel like the conference did a good job of being able to replenish those coaches, and it's very ironic that Utah State is not one of those teams that lost a coach, because it feels like they do every single offseason, and they always make a great offseason move, but I think that this conference was refortified by the moves that they made in the offseason at the coaching front.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I think, obviously Eric Olin's one of the best prizes in the whole carousel nationally. What he did at UC San Diego, even if you just go back 2 years, I mean, they basically just making the transition from D2 to D1, somehow keeping that group together. And I mean, basically, the sum of their parts was always greater than the individual parts. And I think he'll keep that going in a big way at New Mexico, just with, a little bit more money to work with and a bigger home crowd to play in front of. But I don't think much will change with his system. He spent 21 years at UC San Diego, I believe. So that's just huge. And Ollie was a great hire for Colorado State. I mean, he's invested in that program. He's going to be able to recruit really well. He's got a great staff around him. Just such a great culture in Fort Collins. So those two specifically. And then I think with Pastner, you've got a great wild card there because Pastner's not afraid of anything. He's obviously going to get players. He got Scott Garson, a good friend of mine, who's ran the Santa Clara offense the last 7 years to come over. And that was the first Santa Clara assistant coach to leave in the last 7 years. I think that's just an underrated hire by Josh Pastner. Obviously, with these top 8 projected players led by Kamani Hamilton, who's just an absolute stud from High Point. And then, of course, Miles Che, who's a deadly shooter from Irvine. A lot of winning players on this roster, Greg. You got Dre Gibbs Lawhorn as well, over from Illinois. I mean, this is the kind of team you're going to see in your backyard from now on, I think, with this type of size, this type of talent. And under Garson's offensive system, I think they're going to have one of the best offenses in the league. And now it comes down to how many stops can the Rebels generate. But I think they're going to schedule well. And I think obviously playing in the Players era, they have great games right there during Thanksgiving week. And then I think also they're gonna surprise some people this year.
Yep, I think that they're going to be able to do so as well. I think that the offense is going to be very crisp, and I do think that the Mountain West, once again, going to be providing good high-level basketball, and we need the Mountain West because those late games, we get fewer of them with conference realignment, with the way that the Pac-12 was dissolved. I was looking for the word dissolved there, but the way that the Pac-12 was dissolved, that really hurt things. So always love me some Mountain West, always love me some WAC, and obviously the Big West is going to be a lot of fun as well. And Rocco, you're helping out all these teams. You do such a tremendous job over on the scheduling front. I know that even though August isn't a busy time of year for a lot of people analyzing college basketball, you're busy helping out these teams set themselves up for success when it comes to the winter and fall months. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, there's no question, Greg. I think just while we've been talking, I missed a call from UC Irvine. And big reason why nobody wants to play UC Irvine. So they're still looking for a couple games, and that's just how it goes. And yeah, the Big West took a gigantic step forward last year. Best Big West season in at least 20 years. And let's hope that can continue. UC Santa Barbara poured a ton of resources into their roster. Obviously, you got an incredible coach at Cal State Northridge and Cal Poly, with Mike DeGeorge at Cal Poly and Andy Newman at CSUN, doing things not seen at those two places in a very long time. Quality throughout the league for the most part. So can't be more excited of where the Big West is going. And then, of course, adding Utah Valley and California Baptist next year, plus Sacramento State with Mike Bibby. The Big West going to need a new TV deal now, Greg. That's what I got to say. But otherwise, you can find my work. Bracketeer.org is my foundational website. Non-conference schedule is very easy to find there. Every Power 5 league is now available. Released the ACC just earlier this week. And as we move forward, speaking of the Mountain West scheduling page will be next, and then we'll have the WCC. And by the end of August, the goal would be to have at least the top 10 to 12 leagues nationally posted, so you guys out there can easily figure out who's playing who as you gear up for the season. I'm also on X/Twitter and Blue Sky under at Rocco Miller 8, the number 8. And we are going to be launching a live Field of 68 mid-major show, which will be a first. We've had the show for years, but this will be a live production, which will be really exciting. And I think once the season gets going, Greg, that will be on Thursday nights. So many of these mid-major leagues play Thursday and Saturdays. So we felt like that was the perfect afternoon to do it as we lead into tip-offs starting at 7 Eastern in most of the East Coast conferences. So look for that with me and Sean Paul. And then Basket Under Review is a new platform under Trilly Donovan. I wrote a piece this week. Feel free to check it out about coaches entering year 3. I think I addressed 61 head coaches in that article. Took me about a month to write. So I'm not the fastest writer that Trilly brought on, but hopefully it's quality. And we did a nice tribute for Amir Abdur-Rahim. Rest in peace. And thanks again for everybody out there following.
Absolutely. And Rocco, he's such a wealth of knowledge and does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
When my husband came home from his military deployment, readjusting was hard for all of us. Thankfully, I found Talkspace.
Talkspace provides professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatric providers online. Military members, veterans, and their dependents ages 13 and older can get fast access to providers, all from the privacy of their computers or smartphones.
I just answered a few questions online, and Talkspace matched me with a therapist. We meet when it's convenient for me, and I can message her anytime. It was so easy to set up, and they accept TRICARE. Therapy was going so well, my husband and I started seeing a couples therapist through Talkspace too.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, including TRICARE. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com/military. Go to Talkspace.com/military to get started today. That's Talkspace.com/military.